Um, I'm Phil DeLuca.
Hi, I'm Shivam.
And I'm Sean Patchen.
And we are Commanderin. Finally, we're only, a half hour and 2 minutes late. Thanks for hanging out with us, everybody, in Twitch, and we're sorry that it took so long. We had some significant technical difficulties, including we just, went offline. Nobody could see us anymore or hear us. So we put a spotlight on community issues, but never ever talk about three banned topics, and I think Rogue Artificer tried to mention one of them in chat, and chat stomped all over him. Religion, politics, and Hearthstone. And by chat stomped all over him, I mean nobody said anything. I think chat just prevented the message from being sent.
You know what? It's been that kind of night.
Yeah, it really, really has. So far, even. So we have a wonderful show lined up for you, and we want to thank everybody, by the way, for joining us. And because this episode, this show, we're going to talk to Mr. Patchen there about his dungeon deck. And this is the deck that is a dungeon itself. And all the other players are fighting against not only each other, but the dungeon, too. Now, he's playing, the person who drives the deck plays the deck itself and tries to win. I had the pleasure of playing against it at MFLA. Yeah, I almost let that slip. How about that? And Nick Berry, who's a friend of mine from Seattle, and we met him. He and I met actually at the last GP Seattle. Some crazy circumstances, and we'll actually talk about that next time we're together. But he was driving it, and Ryan Green and Zach Taylor from the Brothers War podcast were playing alongside me against this deck, and it really felt like we were playing against the deck. And Nick kind of explained what was going on, and he said. Sorry, Sean Patchen, who is at Swords to Plow on Twitter. We've been talking to each other for years, and now finally, we have this perfect moment to bring him on and talk about this. So, welcome, Sean.
I'm happy to be here.
Yeah, we're super stoked. This is one of the coolest decks I've heard of and seen. I've got to see it when Phil was playing it in LA, and then I also got to see it again later on Letting Ready Run stream, and also I think wasn't it also at GDC as well? Maybe not, but I got to talk about it at GDC with some of the folks who had played it before. I just love the idea of a deck that's an actual event, not just like a theme or like a commander or a concept. But this deck is like an actual dungeon that you're trying to go through. It felt kind of like playing Munchkin or playing a board game of some kind, or it was one of the most innovative concepts I've seen, and I was just super stoked with it. It's such a cool idea.
It is a really cool idea. And
I'm really happy to hear you guys had such fun playing against it. Maybe next time I'll actually get a pilot against you.
Yeah, then we'll see all the secrets come out. So before we get into the main topic, because we do want to talk about this deck, and we'll explain the concepts behind it, a lot of people want to know how they can help the show, and of course the main way you can help the show is just by sending it to a friend. Send the link to this Twitch channel or to YouTube if you're watching it on YouTube, or the link to the episode itself from a podcast player. Send that to a friend. Let them know that, hey, you listen to this really cool podcast with these really cool people on it, because, I mean, talking about magic, right? That's really cool. And they should listen to it too. So just send it to them. We appreciate that. You can also review us wherever it is you get your podcast from, or right here on YouTube, or wherever it is on Twitch that you can do these things. And leave us a positive review, please. And we'll be put in front of more people, because that's what these channels like to do. They like to give more people exposure to cool content. And if you rate us cool, then hey, I guess we're cool. So you can also visit us on YouTube, like I said, comment, rate, and subscribe. Play us to the end, because that actually matters. Ring that bell, too, so you get all the notifications when we put up every time we put up a new episode. Like most recently, of course, we did the War of the Spark preview, and that was really cool. So come see that. And if you want to go the extra step of really providing material support to the podcast, because you have a couple of extra dollars a month and you enjoy what we put inside of your ear holes and inside now of your eye holes, where you can see my eyes flare every time I say something creepy. You can visit Patreon. Shivam, just kill me. You can visit patreon.com/commanderin.mtg.
You're doing such a good job, Phil.
You can visit commanderin.mtg.com/donations, or you can go to GoFundMe and search for Commanderin and use the one with the C logo. It helps us keep the lights on here in Podcastia and actually keep the lights on.
Yeah, like we actually just got new lights. It's amazing.
Like it's, I don't know how this will turn out, but look at this light, everybody. It's really fancy. Shivam found it, and it works really well, so I put it on, and so now we're all well lit. And for in the province of Podcastia that Sean Patchen lives in, we had him turn his lights off. So yeah, I don't know where that's going. Ordinarily, we call out 3 of our patroni, and I did not have time. I'm sorry to trawl it. Yeah, and we're starting this. It's 10 p.m. Pacific time, so it's a little bit late. But we do have a sponsor other than our patroni, and we will next time we'll create the long list, and Andy Bentley will have his crazy name read out loud. But we want to welcome aboard Quiver Time, and they make the fabulous Quiver deck cases. They're actually storage cases. Think of them that way. Now, Shivam puts like 5 double-sleeve Commander decks in his Quiver, and it's a fantastic...
And from our last episode, I'd been given the bit of feedback that our audio listeners can't see our Quivers when we hold them up to the mic the camera. So for you guys at home listening in your cars, imagine that this box is about a yard long or about 3 feet or so, and it's big enough to hold 5 stacked double sleeve decks on top of each other. It's got little partitions inside that are made of this really nice little like wrapped felt foam. And there's also enough space for you to be able to put dice, to put tokens, life counters. You can roll up a pad and shove it on top, and there's enough room on the top of the thing to be able to have a couple of playmats in there. The zippers are really good all the way around, and they're waterproof. Mm-hmm. And I tested this at GPLA, where it was pouring buckets, and my cards stayed way drier than I did. So, we are super stoked to have Quiver on board. We're really grateful that they decided to join us, and all of us use these things like personally.
Yeah,
I love it. It's great. It's maybe one of the better deck like magic accessories that I've picked up.
Yes. And Shivam, you said it was a yard long. It's actually about a half yard long. It's only 17.5 inches long, but it's made of this gorgeous faux leather material.
I'm not good at judging distance.
It's spectacular. Many people don't realize this, but Shivam is like 18 feet tall. And so he doesn't judge human distances like the rest of us.
Yeah, a yard is literally just the distance between my heel and my toes.
Yeah, it's like if that. So, but they're fantastic. Go take a look at them, and we'll be giving away a Quiver and some of their brand new Artemis sleeves to a couple of our patrons at the beginning of May. So you have time now. Join in April, and you qualify for this giveaway. It's going to be awesome. And remember, go visit them at quivertime.com, and you'll get to see all the stuff. Now, I hesitate to ask, because you did have a significant meeting just before this one. Is there any news that you want to bring to our listeners from the Commander Advisory Group?
Well, today we had the first official Commander Advisory Group and Rules Committee meeting. The things we discussed in that meeting, I can't talk about.
That's right.
However, it was really cool and really long, and I had a really good time. And it's really great to see that the Rules Committee is so open and ready to accept outside feedback. And I was able to bring to them a lot of concerns that you guys have brought to me. Like, I've talked to a lot of CEDH players. I've talked to a lot of casual folks, people from every spectrum of the game. And I was able to bring a lot of what you guys wanted me to talk about to the meeting. And it was great and it was productive. I can't tell you anything about what's actually going to come from it. but there's definitely going to be, like, for instance, an overhaul of the presentation of the site, of like the official Commander rule site, and probably a rewriting of the philosophy document to be a little bit more clear and updated. But it's really cool. There's really cool things happening, and I'm super stoked.
Yeah, that's cool. That's cool. Well, we can't wait to hear about it. And listeners,
They tried to ban Island. I did my best to stop them, but I guess
you should
it's
have
going to
allowed
be
it.
a color square from now on. Sorry.
You should have
Those
allowed
are the
it.
rules.
So, listeners and viewers, if like Shivam and I don't actually talk about this, he was in this meeting and he came out of it just cold, stepped right into Discord so we could make this show right here. And
Yeah, the meeting literally just ended, actually, right now.
yeah,
Like, I was still chatting in the Discord while we were recording.
Shivam shut the Discord server down for the CAG and the Rules Committee just so that he can come here.
Yes. That's exactly what I did.
That is indeed. So now we're going to get to our main topic. This is, again, it's the dungeon deck. Now, Sean, we're going to turn it over to you, and you're going to tell us a little bit about this, right? Like who the commander is and what the strategy is.
Actually,
Sure.
who are you, Sean?
Oh, yeah, we didn't
who am
introduce
I?
you. We just assumed everybody knows you.
Does that part matter?
It does.
All right. Yeah, I'm Sean Patchen, Swords to Plow on Twitter. I do work over at Card Kingdom, but I should probably say nothing I say reflects their views. Not paid for this appearance. They didn't give me any coaching. They don't know this is happening.
Well, they will, but
but I do love the company. The symbol on the hat is our brick and mortar store's Mox Boarding House, which definitely went a long way to inspiring the deck. So
that's awesome.
Now, have you ever podcasted?
yeah, a long time ago, but you probably shouldn't search those up. The quality is way worse than this, and I don't just mean audio. So,
yeah. Well, yeah, it's a new era in podcasting, actually.
yeah. I mean, you could do the funny thing where you take old clips of me and have me argue with myself, because the way I used to play was very different from the way I play now. But aside from that, it's mostly garbage.
That's
So,
just go. Yeah, you're right. Go.
yeah, so I just wanted to ask about this deck before we really get into the nitty-gritty of it. Maybe you could tell us a little bit about how did you come up with the idea of making a dungeon crawl deck?
Yeah.
Like, do you normally do these kind of event decks, or was this just like, oh, you had a brainstorm and you really wanted to try this out?
Sure. This deck did come during the period of time where we were trying uncards as legal. I had I had a gathering with some friends. Bruce, who I'm trying to remember where he writes for now, used to be on TCG Player, used to be on Gathering Magic. Bruce Richards has been around for a while. He was hosting a bunch of us at his house. We all wanted to try this Uncommander variant, and I wanted to bring something that was different. And they printed the Sword of Dungeons and Dragons, and I'm a huge RPG fan. It's kind of right there in the middle, whether or not I like Magic more or role-playing games more. And so Magic has done a great job of bringing its universe into Dungeons and Dragons with some supplemental materials that you can use for D&D. And I was hoping to do the other thing and bring it back the other way. And I also love board games, and games like Heroes of the Multiverse, Legendary, the Pathfinder card game all seem to have done a pretty good job of making this work. Yeah. So I took a lot of their ideas and concepts and built it in.
Yeah. It's really exciting.
Yeah, no, that seems to be a really, actually, because I know both Phil and I are also hardcore D&D players and hardcore Magic players, so this intersection really just kind of worked super well for us.
Yeah.
I don't know, I guess I'm just super in love with the idea that you're playing an autonomous game while everybody else is playing EDH. And, you know, like, if I may nerd out for a second, in Star Wars, there's a book in the old extended universe where Lando and Han Solo are playing a game of Sabacc to try to get the Millennium Falcon back, and C-3PO is sitting there as a randomizer to be like, whoops, now we're playing with this different rule set, now we're playing with this different rule set, and the cards they have on the table change values and stuff based on their going. And the way your D&D deck kind of worked felt a little bit like 3 people are playing EDH, and then there's a machine in the corner that's going to wreck everything. and just like suddenly we're on the ceiling. Suddenly everybody's green. What's happening? Who knows? It had that really cool puzzle feel to it, and I love that.
Yeah, a slightly less an explanation that relies slightly less on Star Wars esoterica might be something like Plane Chase EDH, right, where the rules kind of change.
Or that, yes.
Where they could change from turn to turn, and it just depends on what the players do. And what Nick was also doing was offering treasure in the form of a bounty, where if somebody managed to destroy a really heavy enchantment, right, a oppressive enchantment, then he would actually, or rather, he would ask for an enchantment to be destroyed and then would do something in return for that player. So he was doing politics, but using the dungeon deck as the pretext for it. It was really good.
I feel like that takes both a good deck and a good player.
Nick is no slouch.
No, absolutely not
at all.
I should tell him to tune in to this episode. He might get a kick out of it. But while I do that, why don't you tell us about the commander? Now I'm going to pull the Scryfall up for the commander. No?
Sure. Would you like me to read aloud the rules text on the commander?
Yes, please do.
Yes, please do. And look, I'm actually sorry, I screwed it up because this is new technology to me. But while you read it, it will be up. So go ahead.
Excellent. So the commander is Zedru the Great-Hearted. It's a legendary creature, Minotaur monk. Minotaur because Minotaurs are in mazes. And at the beginning of your upkeep, you gain X life and draw X card, where X is the number of permanents you own that your opponents control. You can pay a red, white, and blue, and target opponent gains control of target permanent you control. So just say a couple short things of why this was the particular commander for the deck. Because I went over a few things. It was hard to take black out for the sort of deck because dungeons and black do go pretty well together. There are a lot of good enchantments for it. There is the donate aspect, but there's also the card advantage. One of the hard things to do in this deck is you have so many self-imposed rules on yourself for setting up the game and keeping it going that you need a massive amount of card advantage. And the basis of the deck plays very much like a chaos control deck and a regular Zedru deck, where you give away every piece of the deck you possibly can, so you can both continually refill your hand to make sure that you keep having the creatures and the mana and everything you need, and so you can gain life, because you really are goading people to swing at you a lot. And if you want the game to go on for a while, you need to be able to recover from getting smacked in the face and laughing about it.
Yeah, that did get brutal after a while, because he was taking all of these enchantments that they don't care who owns them, right? They're just forcing everybody to do something terrible. And then he would just give them away. And at the beginning of the turn, he would gain this life because people were being kind of aggressive toward him. And he would draw all of these cards. And it was just fantastic. Even a trickle of like 2 or 3 cards, a trickle, because it turned into a torrent at one point, right? Even a trickle is fantastic. So do you want to move on to the first concept? I think I can get our show plan to show up here. No?
Sure.
Let's see, actually. I'm not sure I can.
All right. Well, I can talk about it while you're looking at it. Yeah. So the first part of this is where the deck really gets its name from, is the dungeon deck, which are the dungeons. So in the deck, you have between 7 and 10, because the deck's always changing, because I like to try new things in my EDH decks. Chaos effects, for lack of a better term. They are enchantments that affect the game and change the basic rules of the game. So not just random coin flip chaos things. These are things like topsy-turvy, where you take all of your steps in reverse order. Or shared fate, where you have to draw all of your cards off of other people's decks.
Oh God, I
anything,
hate that card.
Anything that can just skew the regular rules of Magic. And one of the important things when you're playing the deck, if somebody decides to take this list and play on their own, is you really only want one out at a time. If you play multiples, it can create a very grief-like situation, and that's not the goal at all. These are supposed to represent the cavern you walk into, and whatever wizard has set up the cavern or whatever monster is protecting their treasure has just set up one base rule. So think of it when you're going on a dungeon crawl, it'd be like the idea of being in an underwater dungeon. So there's going to be rules you're going to play with all the way through the dungeon, and then once you finish it, you find a way to get rid of them. and cycle on to the next dungeon for the players to crawl through.
And so these are dungeons on this this page. This is showing in Twitch chat right now.
Grand Calcutron, Shared Fate, Mystic Barrier. Mystic Barrier, by the way, such a cool card. For 4 and a white enchantment, when it enters the battlefield, at the beginning of your upkeep, choose left or right. Each player may only attack the opponent seated nearest to him or her in the last chosen direction, and planeswalkers controlled by that player.
I've seen that. I love that card. Yeah, it's awesome.
Yeah. So this one's an important one because the only way you can really win in this sort of deck, because it's pretty clunky and slow on its own, is by having the players turn against each other. Because if all 3 players go against you, you're definitely going to lose. So the real way you win is by giving some treasures and some not, and you try to get them to get at each other's throats and finish each other off. Because if they're not loyal to each other, then they're not going to beat this thing. And this is a great example of a dungeon that does exactly that.
Yeah, that's very cool. And why did you select the Grand Calcutron? It's a silver border, right? I know you were doing this at the time silver border was popular.
Mm-hmm. So I selected this one, I think, for the same reason they printed it, out of pure nostalgia for Richard Garfield and his game Robo Rally.
Yeah.
I mean, that's essentially, it says we're playing Magic, but Robo Rally on the card. It's a lot of text, so I don't want to read through it. But yeah, you play your hand as a circuit. If you haven't played Robo Rally, you should go try it. If not, you can play against this deck and try to figure it out with Magic cards.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. I think he got Grand Calcutron out while we were playing, and that was something we all just looked at and went, "No, we have to get rid of this right now."
Yeah, that's a funny one. If you've played with it enough, it doesn't really seem like that big of a deal. But anytime somebody's played with it for the first time, it looks like their eyes cross as they try to figure out how to play Magic for the first time again.
Yeah. It's pretty awesome. And I've used Shared Fate in an actual, like in a non-dungeon deck, and it's just, it creates all sort of chaos. It basically is a way, like all of these are ways to keep your the dungeon deck alive and still pose a threat and mess up all of their plans so that you can keep on merrily chugging away.
So how did you decide which decks you wanted to use? I mean, which cards you wanted to use for the dungeons? Did you just go through and find every wacky enchantment they printed?
Kind of. I'm a big Scryfall fan, and I look through them. Some of these I've used before. I had a friend who used to play Zedru Pure Chaos, where he tried to get out as many of these enchantments as possible. And then I think he used to call it a Judge Breaker deck, where he would try to make the state of the game so complicated that his win con was people scooping out of confusion, which I actually enjoyed playing against quite a bit. And a few of these were my favorites when he played them. Shared Fate in particular was a favorite of mine, and I still had it from when I used to play Mishra Artificer's Prodigy, because if you play their artifact, you get to search for your copy of the same artist, seeing it again. Yeah.
Because I was just about to say, I'm like, I don't understand how you can play Mishra in an EDH deck. That's sneaky.
Oh, we might need to do another episode. Mishra is one of my favorites.
Oh, that is some nonsense right there.
That's cool. The first time I saw Shared Fate was was in Joel's deck. Joel is up from Seattle as well. He's part of Nick's group. And I had met Joel long before Nick, but we were playing a Kingdoms game, and he had Shared Fate out, and we were like, "What?" Or maybe I'm conflating that, but either way, Shared Fate was an important part of that game. Play so many games at these GPs, it's hard to remember. Now your next one is, let's see if we can get this to work.
Traps.
Is traps, right? So what does that mean?
Yeah, so traps are how a dungeon stays alive. Right? If you're going through a dungeon, you're either going to have some creatures you stumble into, or more importantly, you're going to set up traps for adventurers to stumble into. So that is the control method I wanted to use here, which was something that took away players' permanence temporarily. So you get trapped, and then you can find your way out of it. And so these are essentially all Oblivion Ring effects. And what Oblivion Ring effects are, I'll just read Oblivion Ring. When they enter the battlefield, you exile another target non-land permanent, and then when that enchantment leaves the battlefield, you return the exiled card to the battlefield under its owner's control. And there are a number of printings of this, and they're in here for two reasons. One, the flavor of you take something away from somebody, but you give them the chance to get it back. And I love that interaction with people. It's not gone forever. You have a chance to do with it what you want. And then the other important aspect of it is for Zedru, it is another way to donate useless things to people so that you can draw more cards.
Yeah. Yeah, I think he got Detention Sphere out, which is like an Oblivion Ring, right? And then just gave it away. It's awesome.
I hate Detention Sphere, but that's because I play token decks, and you know what? Detention Sphere is really good against. Yeah.
Yeah.
Hit one, hit them all.
It's easy to forget because we often see these 3-mana Oblivion Rings and similar just as a single target. But Detention Sphere is multiple targets. Not even targets. It's all permanents with the same name. Non-land, of course. So what's your next? Your next category is random encounters?
Yeah, and this one, I've tried a number of things for this. And what it represents is when people go through a dungeon, they run into random creatures.
Yes.
So this is how you hit your goblins and kobolds and things. And the way I try to make that happen is through hidden knowledge. So either morph creatures, which are a new addition as I tested it out a little bit, and it seemed to be a great way to hide things from people, or cards like Clone Shell and Summoner's Egg, where you actually exile something face down, and when that creature dies, whatever is face down underneath it comes into play. And so you don't know if the thing that's going to come into play is going to be something that could possibly help everybody or is just a little dork, or if it's one of the big dungeon boss monsters that has been hiding under there all the time. And
I love this.
Yeah, isn't that cool?
Morph, they range from things as small, I guess, as Chrome Shell Crab, which you get to exchange control of creatures, and as big as Red.
Oh.
So you never know what's going to happen. The rule on the morph ones that I have is that I don't unmorph them until somebody it either blocks or somebody blocks it. So they really don't know. So I chose all reactionary that don't hit the stack. So you're not going to see a Willbender in here. It's not so much for my benefit as it is for shock and awe.
That is rad.
Now we also have this up on the screen right now, so our viewers can see it. And these three, just like the three before it from the traps category, these are just examples, right? You have more of each type.
That's correct.
Yeah.
I only have two right now of the Clone Shell and Summoner's Egg type. I haven't found anything else that's quite the same as that. I have in the past used Hoarding Dragon and then asked the permission of people to hide the card under it face down.
Yeah.
And similar items where you search and hide something where you'd normally have to reveal it. People have actually been very receptive to the surprise factor.
Yeah. That Clone Shell is clever. I want to use that in other decks too.
Yeah, I know. These are all just such cool. Chrome Shell Crab by itself seems like such a fun card to be playing.
Doesn't it?
Like, what a silly idea. I love this. But Morph is like one of my secret favorite mechanics, so I'm always happy to see weird new ways to use it.
Yeah.
And I don't know, I love the idea of the fact that it's just hidden in that weird spider thing. You walk up to it and inadvertently tap on it, and it's like, poof! You're now in an encounter with a chroma, and you're like, no.
You didn't like the Khan's interpretation, where it was like a ball of energy.
The Khan's interpretation's fine, but the idea of the clay spider thing seems more fitting with this deck.
It's creepy.
Yeah, or you're just going down a dark corridor. You're like, I hear some noise. Flip. Uh-oh. Corona's Vila. I just swung an axe and hit myself.
Yeah.
Oh, no.
Yeah, that's excellent. All right.
Oh, it's delightful.
Let's see. Let's put the show plan back up and then talk about the next category. I remember this.
So the next category is the boss monsters. So similar to the dungeons, there's a self-imposed rule that you should only have one at a time. This is a self-imposed rule, so I don't feel like a jerk for playing whatever broken creatures that I want in there. I think the list currently has new Emrakul in it. So normally I think that would not be fun, but if it's the only big creature out, maybe. Or something like Animate Library that is just a massive one-shot kill creature. These are here to create a threat. When a boss monster is out, it's not something that you should be able to ignore. It should be something that turns everyone's head and requires a solution immediately. And so no hurt feelings happen when one of these gets stolen from me or destroyed. I absolutely expect that. The rule for these was just that they needed to be head turning and they needed to impact the game right away. Everybody had to see them. And also that I think they're fun in one way or another.
Yeah.
Either the art is fun or the mechanic is fun, and I didn't want any of them to be too similar to another. But this is a spot where if you're building it at home, just put in whatever your favorite giant fatty is.
Yep.
Oh, that's so cool. Do you have the was it the big sea monster that when you flip it over it bounces everything back to its hands? Is that Brine Elemental?
I don't now, but
or Tide Spout Tyrant or whatever.
No, it's everything that isn't a Leviathan or Kraken or something like that.
Yes, that one.
And it's a morph card, right?
Yeah, that's why I was thinking about it.
Yeah.
I don't right now, but it would definitely fit on theme. Like it could get in there if I get bored with any of the current monsters that are in there. This is the section that probably cycles most often. The only card in here that has been a mainstay has been Animate Library, because I like the idea of a dungeon coming to life.
I love
and
that.
Attacking the people.
Yeah.
The other rule with these, which I suppose is very important, is if a boss monster is to die, this is what Nick was talking about. If you kill the big boss monster, it's the job of the dungeon deck to then get rid of the dungeon for you so that you can move on to the next dungeon. So the reward for beating one of these is getting rid of the dungeon itself, or the reverse. If you get rid of the dungeon, then I will sacrifice the big creature.
Yeah.
Because you've gotten rid of its home.
That's cool.
Oh, sorry.
I like that idea of having like self-imposed rules to keep it fun like that, because it feels like I don't know. It's so thematic. It makes me so happy.
Yeah, this is a really fun concept. I'm going to be building a version of this deck.
Oh yeah, like this. I feel like this needs to be just one of those. I wonder if this deck can even autopilot itself. I wonder if there's a way you could set it up to, like, kind of just go off, like stack the deck so that somebody could even play against it solo.
It'd be interesting to find out. Maybe you could do it the way that I said Sentinels of the Multiverse does, where you have your environment deck, which actually has the dungeons in it. You have like the boss deck, and then you have the other decks fighting. It's possible that you could have this be something that somewhat autopilots. It'd be interesting to see if people try it at home, what happened.
Yeah. So, listeners and viewers, if you do try this deck and do manage to implement something Sentinels of the Multiverse, which, by the way, is a pretty good game, you should pick that up and try it out. Let us know. By all means, tweet us. If you have ideas about how to do that, tweet at us as well.
Rogue Artificer brings up a good idea that this deck seems like it would be a great archenemy.
Yeah.
Oh, absolutely.
With the archenemy decks and being able to add that extra kind of pile of chaos every turn. I don't know. It feels like there's so many places you can go with this theme. And are you tied to having? I mean, Zedru is a good boss to have as like the main commander, but like, I guess you don't want to go too broad because it's good to have some limitations. Otherwise, the deck would kind of get out of control. But it would be cool to have black to be able to have skeletons and zombies wandering around your dungeon.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think you could apply the principles of the deck to a different color identity for sure.
I actually kind of want to use this.
Yeah.
I kind of want to use this in a D&D game. Like to be the boss to show up and start putting out like traps and dungeons and things for the players to run into. Seems like it would be a real hoot.
Yeah.
So I actually do something like that in my Star Wars RPG that I'm in right now, where every now and then if there is a sufficiently complicated, rather than trying to handle it with just dice, I bring in an outside board game.
That's rad. That's rad. That sounds really cool.
For example, one of the, I know this is getting way off topic, But one of the encounters, they were trying to investigate a murder and figure out what had happened. So we played the game Mysterium, and depending on how well they did was how much information they got about the murder.
That's really cool.
That's cool.
Yeah, that's neat.
And I used to do that in my D&D games too.
Okay. I am about to run down several tangents at one time. It would be impossible to understand what I say. So, yeah, that sounds really cool, and we should probably talk about that at some point. But,
yeah, that's an episode worth doing. But in the meantime, let's talk about what happened when you kill a boss monster.
Yeah.
The treasure.
So, aside from the important thing of actually being able to escape whatever terrible dungeon you were in, you get the treasure. And right now, the treasures in the deck are set up to be the whole sword cycle. That was a recent change. Some of the treasures used to be things like a Howling Mine or Font of Mythos, where you just bring them out and it was a universal good effect. I believe we're going to post the non-un version of this as well. And I believe those are still in the treasure section for the non-un version.
Non-un version.
Yeah. So essentially you really do reward people for beating up these monsters with some sort of epic piece of equipment that they can then use. You're hoping to defeat the other players because you don't want them to kill you because then they lose their treasure.
Yeah, so I've been trying to remember how he transferred the treasures to us, and the whole time I'm like, how do you give a card to somebody? I just don't... Oh, yeah, Zedru. Yeah, and he did that. He awarded somebody. I think he had the Sword of D&D out, and I think he gave that to somebody. I can't remember. I know he animated my library. I was very salty about that. But then he used it. Yeah, he like one-shotted somebody with it, and it was nasty. But
that's hilarious.
Yeah. It was really kind of rude. It was a really really fun game.
So, yeah, Phil, why don't you talk about that? What was your experience being on the other side of this deck?
It was pretty awesome. Like I've been playing role-playing games for longer than most of our listeners have been alive, and was sitting down across from this and listening to Nick's description of it, and he was very very clear, very concise, and he made sure we understood there were uncards in here, but it wasn't unfair. It was just to maintain the spirit of the deck, which was you guys, like you folks are adventurers going through this dungeon. And he said, I'm also going to play EDH, right? Like I'm going to try to win. And at the same time, that just represents the dungeon having a total party kill. And the difference is, like, the three of us were actually not cooperating very much. We had to stop the dungeon deck. But at the same time, as soon as we turned our backs, a knife went in. So it was just like playing D&D in high school, too. What I noticed is when the dungeon would become too prevalent, we would put down our animosities, set them aside, rather, and then attack the dungeon deck. But then once the dungeon deck was no longer a threat, we would turn on each other. So we had the net effect of kind of extending the game. This is not one where you're rushing to complete it, or you're doing a lot of things in a multiplayer game in order to, hurry it along or make teams like in Secret Partners. This is very much like the dungeon deck is going to interfere with everybody's game. And until you can take it out, your game will actually slow down. But it's like solving a puzzle as opposed to, that mindless slog when there's somebody casts stasis and they're in a stacks deck and it's just misery. It's not like that at all. It's like, no, here's this puzzle, you better solve it because the dungeon deck's going to win if you don't. Oh, and by the way, if you don't stop this animated library, it's going to crush everybody. That was horrible.
Animate library is such an awesome card.
Yeah, it really is. It really is. Yeah, it's great. And if you make variations of this, and of course you're going to, as you see new big creatures and new threats, we'd love to see it. It's really cool.
This deck seems like it's a real treat. Like,
yeah.
I just want to see more decks like this that are just environment changing.
Yeah.
I just think it's such a ripe idea for just cool stuff. It's so neat.
Oh, it's amazing. And So, Sean, of course, you're going to be at MF Seattle, right?
Yes, I'll absolutely be there.
So you'll be playing this there, and hopefully remind us when Seattle comes along, because we're going to be mired in a bunch of stuff at that time, and we'll make sure that people know that they can find you and play. And are you or Nick going to be at Vegas, do you think?
I need to talk to Nick. I think he went last year, so hopefully he'll go again. If he does, he'll be borrowing this deck again.
Sweet. Yeah, because I definitely want to play it again. And if we can get Shivam out to Vegas, then Shivam, this is a real treat.
I actually think this year I'm going to be able to make it to Vegas. I don't think I can make it to Seattle, but I'm pretty sure I'm going to be making it to Vegas, because it turns out Vegas is also the launch weekend for Commander 2019 or whatever it is.
Whatever this year is.
And I don't know, I feel like it would be I missed the last Vegas. I want to go to this one. And it's late enough in the year that all my projects will be done, so I can actually manage to go.
Yeah, I might not be making it to Seattle this year. I did last year, but Vegas is definitely happening, so it's going to be awesome. Now, Sean, I was going to try to sneak these decks up into the guests folder at Deck Stats, but for those of you who want to see this deck after the show, I'll make sure that it's up in our guests folder at DeckStats. Yeah, I can't even speak. At deckstats.net/commanderin.mtg. The DeckStats folks, or the owner, I should say, is really cool. We've exchanged a lot of information about how to improve the site, and he's tuned it more for Commander players because of our conversations, and so he gave us a direct link. It's awesome. And, of course, it's really the best site for analysis. So we'll put both the undeck and, what did you call it, the non-undeck? The un-undeck?
Yeah, I think I might have called it the leak posted it, since the other one is clearly not following the ban list.
Yeah.
I do want to second, Deck Stats, and they're not paying me for this, is absolutely amazing. I think I've been using like 8+ years.
Yeah.
They've been my favorite for just the longest period of time.
Yeah. A lot of our listeners don't like Deck Stats. Actually, a lot of our listeners we've talked to are kind of like, well, this other site, it has all my decks and we can't import it, and that's just not true. You can actually take all of your old decks, put it up on Deck Stats, enjoy the better interface, enjoy the better analysis tools. Like, once somebody finally gave it a chance, this person was like, oh my goodness. And yeah, Deck Stats isn't paying us either. We just really like that.
The main reason that I use Deck
Stats
is because Phil told me to as part of joining the show. And I was like, all right, I will do that. But the second reason is also because all the stuff in Deck Stats gets ported to EDHREC. And that database is super valuable to all of us. And getting more information there is really, really important. So I would use Deck Stats.
Yeah. Nils is going to be surprised that we're talking about him this much. But yeah, Deck Stats is awesome. It supports the community because it allows EDHREC to pull stats from there. So please use Deck Stats. If you're a Commander player and you want your decks to be a part of the community.
Did you see that, Phil? I didn't say EDREC just for you.
You're very nice. That's very nice of you. I should have said something and I didn't. But yeah, just use Deck Stats. That's enough of that. We're going to have these up in our guest folder right after the show.
All right. So before we go then, Sean, I wanted to ask you, what is your favorite play that you've made with this deck?
Oh, yeah.
What do you think is like the most insane thing that you've been able to get away with?
The most insane thing I've been able to get away with.
Or even somebody using your deck.
So I think it's actually going to have to be somebody against the deck. Which will make sense. During the first time we ever used the deck, it was when all uncards were available. And my friend Omar was playing the Agent of Sneak EDH deck, which was just a steal everything deck. And he ended up mind-slavering this deck to try to see what he could do. And the deck at that time was built in such a way. One of the reasons why it had self-imposed rules was it used to play Mox Lotus and Gleemax, which was perfect for what he was trying to do. But it didn't have a lot of good ways to actually kill people when it had infinite mana. In fact, all you could do with infinite mana was give everything away with Zedra. And so he ended up doing a cycle of turns where he was able to Mindslaver the deck. And long story short, everybody ended up laughing like crazy. It was the only time I've ever seen Mindslaver be fun. And he was legitimately taking turns looking at people's confusing undecks and trying to do things with. Really, all it caused was a shuffling of permanents. He found that I had that uncard open a booster pack from outside of the game.
Yes,
and add cards to the game. So of course we opened some things, and then he gave himself something from the booster pack in past turns. So being able to get taken over, have somebody else use infinite mana, and the only thing they could do with it was open up a pack from outside of the game and add a card to play under their control was super fun.
That's great.
That's adorable.
Yeah. Wow, that's cool.
I love it. I love it.
I've got to get this thing built pretty rapidly because it'll be a blast at my meta, I think.
This deck is so cool.
I know.
And weird.
Well, so we should have mentioned this earlier. Olivia is at Magic Fest London this weekend coming up, and for the viewers who are not watching this live, and of course all of our listeners, it'll be in the past. Olivia will have had a wonderful time. It's good to keep in touch with our guest host, isn't it, Shivam?
Yeah. Who knows? But also, I hope that you guys will enjoy or have enjoyed your pre-release.
That's
I look forward to hearing about all the planeswalkers that you don't get to use as your commanders. And also, Gideon lives forever. R.I.P.
Yeah, that's right. We neglected to mention we're in the middle of the preview season, actually in the final few days of the preview season for War of the Spark right now, and it's pretty exciting the way they did this. I really enjoy.
I think this has been one of the best rollouts that they've had.
Yeah, they took
story sequence is such a good idea.
They took 3 weeks in order to tell it basically an act each week. So the first act was an introduction to what's happening on Ravnica and the early parts of the invasion. The second act was the massive, this is the invasion, it's on, and that's when it was clear now that planeswalkers were actually being killed in the storyline. And now we're in the midst of Act 3, and it looks like Bolas is getting his comeuppance, so it's pretty nice.
There's a lot of good cards. I think we're going to have a real fun set review for this show.
Yeah,
for this set.
We should. We don't typically do set reviews because a lot of our friends on other shows do them, but I think we need to talk about it.
Yeah, because I don't know about you, Phil, but I got a lot of things I want to talk about.
Yeah. Do 5 of the things start with the word finale?
I mean, look, when they make cards specifically for me, what do you want me to do?
Yeah. Yeah. So
there's a card that makes soldiers and angels.
Angels. Yeah. It creates 60 power for 12 mana.
I love it.
It's just insane.
And think about it. I'll get all 60 of those power out, and the next turn I'm going to hit Damnation, and I'll just be like...
But you got the 60 power out, Shiva.
The thought was what mattered.
Hey, Sean, have you seen anything in War of the Spark so far that you want to put into your dungeon deck?
I'm not sure yet. I haven't looked at everything that's been spoiled. This one actually seems the new planeswalkers. They're so interesting with the static abilities and what they are there that they seem to make this great idea for like mini bosses. So you have the main boss for the dungeon. These planeswalkers seem like perfect mini bosses where you have to take care of them, and these are the kind of effects that will stack. Rather than the dungeon itself where there's only one at a time, or a boss that there's one at a time. Yeah. I think I'm going to have to find a way to squeeze some of them in here.
Yeah, because
it feels... I'm sorry, go ahead, Phil.
Because they're like enchantments that don't need specialized removal. That's one of the things about like a card like Shared Fate is if you're not holding enchantment removal, you're in a lot of trouble because it's going to be harder to draw. And the planeswalkers are a lot like that, but easier. So they're kind of like specialized trap rooms or something is the way I would think of them.
Yeah, and I love the way that they push for interactivity more so than enchantments do.
Yeah.
Being able to interact with instants that do direct damage are creatures just prioritizing destroying one of these things. I would love to be able to have that ability on some of these enchantments to make it easier to get rid of them either myself for the prioritization if enough people just swung at them.
Yeah. Cool.
Yeah, like almost all of these planeswalkers feel like traps or bosses for your dungeon.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I don't know, like think about playing, I don't know, you don't have black in there, so you can't put Ashiok in there. But Ashiok's thing where it's like, you can't search your library anymore. That seems like a real irritating trap to run into.
I mean, I may need to create a second one with black in it, and with those enchantments, I may not have to do the gift if I'm using global effect. So that
it just seems like
a secondary deck that's also dungeon themed in a different way.
Yeah.
Neat.
Wow. Yeah, and Zedru gives away planeswalkers too.
Mm-hmm.
Neat. Okay, so yeah, after you drain the planeswalker down to
like a 1 or something,
like 1, and that, you know, it's really neat because most of the planeswalkers have 2 activations in them, and then they just sort of hang around at 1 loyalty counter. There are a couple that can kill themselves, but who knows what that means. But your cherished Saheeli can only get down to 1 loyalty counter. She can't kill herself without assistance. So
yeah, but I'm also thinking about like Domri, whose thing is like, you can't gain life. He does his 2 things and then just sits there and irritates you.
Yep.
And I love that. I think that's so neat.
Yeah, that's great. It forces them to do something about it. You can't just let it sit there forever. It won't just drain itself out. It won't go ultimate, and then you deal with the consequences.
Yeah. Yeah. All right.
Cool.
This is awesome. So if you do revise the deck with War of the Spark, I think what we should do is keep each version of your dungeon deck kind of quote unquote alive in the guest host in the guest section, and that way people can build those decks and play with each of them, make variations. We really want to hear what the community does with this. It's a cool idea. Maybe we can get Brian Canada to make one.
That would be neat.
Yeah, it'd be pretty neat, wouldn't it? Definitely not something he would normally build, and I think he'd enjoy it. He's asleep now. He had to leave because we had so many technical difficulties. It took too long. So it's time to say goodbye, everybody, and thank you so much for joining us this episode. And Sean, thank you for joining us and finally coming on. This is wonderful.
Yeah, it's great. Fun.
Yeah. It's long overdue, man. Long overdue. And I'm sorry we didn't find a reason sooner, but this is the perfect moment, right? It's just so good.
Absolutely.
And the equipment you have there is really good. I think I'm going to add that microphone to our recommended list so that it's kind of a budget version compared to the other stuff. And
excellent.
Yeah, it's really good. So listeners and viewers, if you like what you just heard, then please consider donating $1 a show or even $1 per month. You know, Shivam, if everyone who listened to the show donated $1 a month, we would actually be able to do this full time.
That is such a insane statistic to think about.
Yeah. and so we're trying to get 50 more people. If we can get 50 more people to donate $1 a month, we can actually do a lot more with these videos. We can make them fancier. And that is just a drop in the bucket. So if you've been sitting on the fence and wondering if you should donate, please do. And we really appreciate it because we want to bring you ever better content than what we have now. And also we would be able to schedule a stream at some other time than midnight Eastern. And right.
Yeah, that would be nice.
So if you want to donate to the show, go to patreon.com/commanderin.mtg or commanderin.mtg.com/donations. That's the PayPal version. We take PayPal as well. Or you can go to GoFundMe and search for Commanderin. Another way to actually donate to the show is to purchase some of the merchandise we have. We have some playmats and some T-shirts for sale.
Oh, yeah. We totally forget to plug those. We really should be.
We
should be much better about promoting our own show, Phil.
It's funny, Shivam, because I genuinely think of those things as prizes to give away. But if people did purchase them, that would actually support the show. And
it's almost like merchandising would help us. What? Let's talk about that.
Yeah, maybe we should. Hey, so viewers, you're seeing this live, And Sean is like, I can't believe these monkeys are just realizing this.
Merchandise.
Yeah. So special thanks to our patrons who have already shown their support and who already donate. And remember, patrons this month in April are going to be given a they're gonna be entered to for a giveaway. It's so hard to speak right now. It's 11 o'clock. Patrons of our show will be entered in a giveaway contest for a quiver. You'll get to pick your color. There are 4 colors right now. Purple, which is just amazing. Teal, which is so vibrant and alive. There's a pink, which, again, it's just beautiful. It stands out. And then a black one, which Olivia has. Olivia has the, she needed the black magic quiver, so she got that. And so thank you for your continued support, patrons, and we're hoping to thank you at the beginning of May. We want to say some special thanks to Nate Burgess, former co-host of this show and creator of the theme song for this show. And he put that together, and we're all on it. It's wonderful. Mike Condon for making the guitar riff version of the same theme song. And Mike Condon is the editor of the Brothers War podcast. They're our good friends. Brothers War, Commander's Brew, even Command Zone, of course. They're all friends of it, and Mike Condon is the editor of the Brothers War and did this for us. He actually played that. He slowed it down a little bit. He did a couple of takes. It was really good. And Tyler Webb, who is helping us back up our episodes, he is one of the co-hosts of the Unformatted Review Show, which he and his friend Chris, it's an explicit show, so don't play this around your kids, but he and his friend Chris review odd movies, and they're basically like, I think they watch the movie and then they come talk about them, and they sound a little dead inside, and they talk about it because they really review some painful movies. And it's hilarious.
Are these like Birdemic reviews? The Room, Birdemic, Troll 2, those style of movies?
It's that kind. They have some themes. They did, for example, they did 8 holiday movies, and they were the worst 8 holiday movies they could find. It's pretty funny.
That sounds delightful.
It actually is. It's very funny. But again, it's explicit, so it's not your Commanderin style family friendly. So let's talk about how people can reach us. On Twitter, we're at commanderin.mtg, and you can see the logo above our heads right now, so you know how to spell that. And then individually on Twitter, where I'm at Ketjak, Ketjak.
I'm at Girapuri Gears, which is GHIRAPURIGEARS.
Yeah, and the YouTube version will have these below our heads.
Yeah, the YouTube version will have them. We should put it on the Twitch stream as well underneath somewhere.
Yeah,
links on how to find us.
I keep meaning to do that.
And if you go to our Twitter feed for Commander and MTG, it's got a link to both mine and Phil's Twitter accounts.
Yep,
it's pretty handy.
And our guest host, who is, if you want to ask her all about Magic Fest London, she's at Gobert Hicks, and that's GOBERTHICKS. And then Sean, you've already said it a couple of times. How can people find you on the Twitter?
I am at Swords to Plow, SWORDS.
I love that name, by the way.
PLOW.
So say it again.
Swords to Plow.
Yeah.
And SWORDSTOPLOW.
Right. Yeah. So now, Sean, I don't know if you realize this, but we have this tradition where our guest can take us out. If you go to slide 19 of our show plan, and when I say take us out, you get to say Commanderin and then something else, some phrase that is as witty as you want it to be. We've provided 4 for you to choose from if you can't come up with one on your own. Or don't want to, because maybe it's filthy.
All right. Commanderin, crawl into that dungeon.
That's perfect.
Love it.
Yeah, love it. All right. Have a good night, everybody.
All right, friends. Good night.
All right.